The wrong courtroom. The morning air outside the courthouse was thick with tension. It was one of those days where the city seemed to hold its breath. Reporters lined the sidewalk, their cameras fixed on the main steps, waiting for someone important to arrive. They weren't expecting Keanu Reeves. He wasn't scheduled, he wasn't part of the headline. But sometimes the quietest person in the room rewrites the whole story. Keanu walked through the glass doors slowly, dressed simply in jeans and a dark gray shirt. There was no security detail, no lawyer beside him, no entourage. Just him and a manila folder in his left hand. The guards looked confused but nodded him through once they recognized his face. Inside the courtroom, everything felt formal, stiff. The case was high profile. A tech employee named Clara had filed a lawsuit against a major social media company. She said her original work had been stolen, repackaged, and then sold under their name. The name at the center of it all was Mark Zuckerberg. And to everyone's surprise, he was sitting in the front row, wearing a tailored suit and smirking just slightly. When the judge entered, everyone stood. Keanu took a seat in the back unnoticed. He watched everything quietly, eyes focused, calm but alert. The plaintiff's lawyer fumbled with notes. Clara, sitting beside him, looked nervous and overwhelmed. Her hands shook. The defense team, 5 suited men and women, looked too confident. Mark occasionally leaned over to whisper to one of them and they'd all chuckle. The arguments began. The defense was polished. They used complex language, technical terms, and subtle jabs. Clara's lawyer did his best, but he kept losing the thread. He couldn't keep up. And then it happened. The judge called for a short break. Keanu stood up. Slowly, he walked to the front. The room hushed. He didn't raise his voice. "Your Honor," he said gently. "May I request to speak on behalf of the plaintiff?" The judge blinked. "Mr. Reeves, this is highly unusual. You're not listed as legal counsel." "No, sir," Keanu replied, "but I have relevant experience, and I have the plaintiff's consent." He turned. Clara nodded with tears in her eyes. The courtroom stirred. Mark Zuckerberg raised an eyebrow and gave a half laugh. "This should be interesting," he muttered under his breath. Keanu walked to the front. No suit, no tie, just truth in his hands. He placed the folder on the table and opened it. Inside were emails, documents, handwritten notes, original concepts, timelines, proof. He began simply. "This isn't about technology. It's about trust. About a young woman who believed her work would speak for itself. But it was taken, hidden, rebranded, and sold." He held up a sketch Clara had made 3 years ago. "This is the original interface design, her handwriting, her signature." He moved methodically, email by email, file by file. He didn't use fancy words. He just told the truth like a story and let the evidence speak. The judge leaned forward. The jury looked at each other wide-eyed. Even some of the defense lawyers began to whisper. Keanu didn't accuse. He didn't attack. He simply exposed. "In a world full of noise, silence sometimes hides the biggest crimes," he said. "But silence doesn't mean ignorance, and it never means consent." Mark sat straighter. He no longer looked amused. After an hour, the judge called for recess. Keanu walked back and sat next to Clara. She turned, eyes red with emotion. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Keanu looked at her, his voice steady. "Because someone once did it for me." That night, headlines changed. Keanu Reeves stuns courtroom with legal argument. Mark Zuckerberg caught off guard by unexpected courtroom twist. Clara's case suddenly stronger after surprise appearance, but what no one knew was that this was only the beginning. The courtroom wasn't the real battlefield. The truth was deeper, and Keanu had just lit the first flame. The storm behind the smile. Keanu didn't say a word as they stepped out of the courthouse. Reporters were shouting his name. Cameras flashed from every angle. Clara looked frozen, like she wasn't sure if she was dreaming or if this was really happening. Keanu simply nodded to the crowd and guided her gently to a quiet corner by a stone bench. "You okay?" he asked softly. Clara gave a small nod, her voice shaking. Why did you come? I didn't tell anyone, not even my family. Keanu smiled, just a little. You didn't have to. Your story reached me. She stared at him. What do you mean? He looked up at the sky for a moment like he was remembering something far away. Years ago I wrote something, just a thought. It got stolen. Someone used it in a movie script, they made millions. I stayed quiet. Because I thought no one would believe me. But someone stood up for me, a stranger. He didn't have to. But he did. And it changed my life. Clara's eyes welled with tears. So now you're that stranger for me? Keanu nodded. We all take turns. This is mine. What they didn't know was that back inside the courthouse, Mark Zuckerberg was not smiling anymore. He had gone straight to a private chamber with his lawyers. The lead attorney was sweating. You didn't tell me there was documented evidence? He hissed. Mark shrugged, trying to keep his cool. She was a low-level intern. How was I supposed to know she kept all that? And Keanu Reeves? The lawyer said, raising his voice. What's he doing involved in this? We weren't prepared for that. Mark leaned on the table, tapping it with his fingers. He's an actor. Nothing more. Let's find a way to shut this down quietly. But it was too late. The media was buzzing. Within hours, online forums were flooded with theories, hashtags, and support for Clara. Phrases like "Andar justice for Clara" and "Yark Keanu inspired" began trending. Even former employees started speaking out. Anonymous comments leaked. This isn't the first time. I saw the original files too. Clara's work was real, and we all knew it. Meanwhile, Keanu and Clara sat at a small cafe nearby. It was quiet, warm. The smell of fresh coffee made the space feel safe. You were amazing today, Clara said, still in disbelief. Keanu shook his head. I didn't do anything you couldn't have done. I just had a steadier. She looked down. I've always been afraid they'd call me a liar. Say I was reaching, making things up. And they would have, Keanu replied gently. Because power doesn't like to be challenged. But you're not alone anymore. He opened his phone and showed her something. It was a direct message from a former senior engineer at the company. Anonymous name. Just one sentence. I know what they did to her. And I'm willing to testify. Clara gasped. Is this real? We'll find out soon, Keanu said. That night, something shifted. A man named Thomas, the former engineer, called from a private number. His voice was calm but firm. I left the company a year ago. They made it impossible for anyone to question the chain of ideas. But Clara's design, it was unique. I saw it. I saw the original date stamps. The metadata. They changed it, made it look like it came from their senior team. Keanu nodded silently on the other end. Will you stand by us? Keanu asked. I'll do more than that, Thomas said. I saved the original file on a personal drive. I wasn't sure why. Maybe part of me knew this day would come. Keanu looked over at Clara, who had her hands pressed to her mouth, trying not to cry. Thank you, Keanu said quietly. As the call ended, Keanu looked out the window. The city was glowing with lights, but the path ahead was darker than ever. He knew what they were up against. Billion-dollar lawyers, reputation machines, manipulation. But he also knew that truth had a strange power. It waited. It endured. And when it rose, it shattered everything that tried to bury it. Back at Zuckerberg's headquarters, the board was uneasy. The legal department urged him to consider a settlement, to make the case disappear before it became a wildfire. But Mark Zuckerberg had a different plan. Find everything you can on Keanu Reeves, he said coldly. His past, his weaknesses, his connections. If he wants to play hero, let's show the world his flaws. But what Mark didn't understand was, Keanu had no interest in looking perfect. He only cared about doing what was right. And the real battle was just beginning. Digging in the dark morning, things had shifted again. Clara's story was no longer just a lawsuit. It had become a symbol of courage, of truth, and of the unexpected kindness of a man no one saw coming. Media outlets picked it up fast. Some were curious, some supportive, and some clearly trying to protect the corporate giant at the center of it all. But no matter the angle, one name kept repeating: Keanu Reeves. He didn't post anything online. Didn't give interviews. He just worked quietly in the background. He and Clara now had more than just a few old files. With Thomas, the former engineer, they had someone who had seen everything from the inside. Someone with real proof. But the question wasn't just whether they could win in court. The question was, could they survive what was coming next? Because Mark Zuckerberg had started playing a different game. Early that day, Keanu's assistant received a strange call from a Hollywood reporter. Is it true Keanu once tried to buy intellectual property for a personal tech startup and failed? What does that have to do with anything? The assistant asked. We just received an anonymous tip suggesting he's trying to sabotage Zuckerberg because of a past grudge. The assistant hung up without answering. Hours later, whispers started online. Half-truths, old photos taken out of context, old associates making vague comments. None of it had real weight, but it was enough to stir doubt. Meanwhile, Clara's inbox was hit with hundreds of messages, some supportive, some threatening. Anonymous accounts accused her of lying, of wanting fame, of ruining the future of innovation. She sat on the edge of her bed, reading each one with her hands shaking. What if this was a mistake, she said, tears rising. Keanu sat on the floor near the window, staring into the distance. It's not a mistake. It's what people do when they're afraid of truth. They throw dirt to see if something will stick. But what if it does? She whispered. Then we keep standing. Not because it's easy, because it's right. Keanu knew this wasn't just about a legal case anymore. This was about power. About what people in control were willing to do to stay there. He called Thomas that evening. They're going to try to ruin everyone involved, Keanu said. Thomas replied, I'm not backing down. I'm tired of silence. My sister looked up to Clara. When the company crushed her work, she quit her dream job. I stayed quiet then. I won't now. I need everything, Keanu said. Dates, names, chain of emails, internal memos, metadata. We need to show how the project moved. And where it was stolen, Thomas agreed. Meanwhile, Zuckerberg sat in a cold, glass-walled room with his team. His jaw was tight. He had been humiliated once in court by an actor of all people, and now the internet was buzzing with support for Clara. His reputation was being chipped piece by piece. He didn't like that. We need to leak something, he said flatly. Anything that shifts the focus. His PR manager hesitated. If we do that and it's traced back, then make sure it's not, he snapped. So they did. Within 24 hours, an old clip of Clara from a college debate surfaced. Taken out of context, it made her sound like she was against technology and free speech. It exploded online. Hashtags flipped. The mood changed. Clara stared at her screen, devastated. They're trying to turn the world against me. Don't fight it, Keanu said. We're not here to argue online. We're here to prove the truth in court. But what if no one listens by then? Keanu gave a soft smile. They will. And even if they don't now, they will when they see the whole picture. But privately, Keanu was preparing for something bigger. He reached out to an old friend, a retired federal investigator. The man had helped Keanu once in a personal matter years ago. Can you dig? Keanu asked. Deep, the man replied. As deep as it takes. Who's the target? Keanu hesitated. Not Zuckerberg. Not yet. The ones who helped him bury the truth. 3 days passed. Thomas sent over a hard drive, encrypted, filled, with digital trails, code logs, timestamps, even recordings from team meetings where Clara's design was discussed long before any senior staff took credit. Keanu studied every detail like it was a script. No more than that, like it was the key to someone's life. Because it was. And then the investigator called. Got something for you, he said. There was a ghost email account used by a senior developer. It was forwarding all of Clara's work to another server. Off the record, hidden. And guess who had access? Who? Keanu asked. Someone very close to Zuckerberg. Someone whose name is on the final patent. A man named Evan Bates. Keanu's eyes narrowed. That name had come up once before. In the courtroom, casually mentioned. A quiet executive with no public face. But he was the key to everything. Can you prove it? Keanu asked. Not yet. But we're getting close. Keanu sat back, took a breath, and looked at the growing pile of evidence. When this goes to court again, he said softly, they won't be laughing. But what Keanu didn't know yet was that Mark Zuckerberg was planning to pull his final card, and it had nothing to do with the court. The silence before the strike. The rain fell gently that morning, soft and steady, like the sky itself was, holding its breath. Keanu stood by the window of his small apartment, watching drops race each other down the glass. Beside him, on the table, were stacks of files, flash drives, printouts, and a notebook filled with scribbled thoughts. Every page held pieces of Clara's truth, but somewhere out there someone was working just as hard to bury it. Keanu turned when he heard Clara's footsteps. Couldn't sleep? She asked quietly. He gave a small shake of the head. Too much to think about. She walked closer and saw the photo in his hand, an old black and white picture of him as a boy standing beside his mother. They looked tired but strong. She raised me alone, Keanu said. Worked 2 jobs. When people mocked her accent, she smiled. When they underpaid her, she stayed longer hours. But the one thing she told me that stuck forever was, when the world gets too loud, listen to the silence, it tells you what's real. Clara looked down, then whispered, I hear silence a lot lately. Then you're doing something right, Keanu replied gently. Meanwhile, in a sleek penthouse across town, Mark Zuckerberg stood before a wall of screens, news feeds, social media posts, financial reports, all updating in real time. He wore a calm expression, but inside he was boiling. His name had taken a hit. Shareholders were nervous. People were questioning the company's ethics, but he had a plan. We're going to neutralize him, Mark said to his head of strategy. Not with lawyers, not with news, with something real, something personal. The man across from him looked unsure. What are you suggesting? Mark leaned closer. Find out who Keanu talks to, where he goes, what he's hiding. I want something that makes the world forget this lawsuit ever happened. Back at the apartment, Clara's phone buzzed. It was a blocked number. She answered cautiously. Clara, this is Thomas. Don't say anything, just listen. Her breath caught. Someone tried to break into my home last night. Nothing was stolen, but the hard drive with the files was moved. They left it open on the desk, like a warning. Her voice trembled. Are you okay? I'm fine. But we need to act fast. The metadata proves everything. The theft, the fake patents, the ghost accounts. If we delay, they'll erase it all. Keanu took the phone from her gently. Thomas, he said firmly, can you meet me tonight? Somewhere safe? Yes. The park off 14th and Ash, 9 p.m. Keanu agreed. He turned to Clara. We're almost there. They're scared. That's why they're getting reckless. But just as they began packing up to leave, a loud knock hit the door. It wasn't polite. It was sharp, impatient. Keanu walked to the door, looked through the peephole. 2 men in suits. Neither smiled. He opened it halfway. Can I help you? Mr. Reeves, one said, flashing a badge. We're here regarding an anonymous tip. Someone claimed you're holding stolen corporate data. Clara froze. Do you have a warrant? Keanu asked calmly. Not yet, the man said. But if you don't cooperate, we'll come back. With one. Just trying to be civil. Keanu studied him. And which company are you here for? Or should I ask, who paid for this visit? The man didn't answer. He just stared, then turned and left. Keanu closed the door. The silence returned, heavier now. They're trying to scare us, Clara whispered. Maybe we should stop. Keanu turned to her, his voice like steel wrapped in kindness. They want us to be afraid. Because they're afraid. We keep going. Later that night, Keanu met Thomas in the park. The shadows were deep. The wind carried whispers. They spoke on a bench beneath a broken street lamp. "This is everything," Thomas said, handing over a small metal box. "I made a backup copy on a drive they can't reach, but this one's for court. It's all there, and every timestamp, every stolen design, and Evan Bates's connection to the fake patent." Keanu took the box carefully. "You're risking everything." "So are you," Thomas replied. Then Thomas looked over his shoulder. "They followed me here. Don't go straight home. Take the long way. Watch your back." Keanu nodded as he walked away, the box tucked tightly under his coat. He passed two men leaning by a lamppost. One of them made eye contact, didn't blink. Keanu didn't stop walking. When he finally reached his motorcycle, he slid the box into a hidden compartment, started the engine, and rode into the night. But someone was following him. Two black cars stayed behind, headlights off. He noticed at the next intersection. Instead of panicking, he turned right, then left, cutting through alleys. He rode faster, weaving through traffic, finally pulling into a parking garage and hiding behind a pillar. The cars passed. Keanu waited in the silence again. His mother's words came back. Listen to the silence. His gut said it all. They weren't just trying to win a court case anymore. They were trying to destroy anyone who stood in their way. The next morning, Clara found an envelope under her door. No return address. Inside was a photo of her younger brother at school and a handwritten note. "Quit before someone else gets hurt." She dropped it, shaking. Keanu arrived minutes later, saw the fear in her eyes. Read the note. He didn't speak for a long time, then he looked at her with a steady gaze. "We're bringing this to court. Now." He picked up the phone, dialed a number. "Judge Lewis, it's Keanu Reeves. We have urgent evidence, and we need to speak before they make it disappear." The judge agreed to see them the next day. As Keanu hung up, he looked out the window. The city was still glowing. But now, it was war. When the masks fall, the courthouse hallway was quiet. Too quiet. Fluorescent lights buzzed above like a warning. No one wanted to hear. Clara sat with her hands folded tight in her lap, her knees bouncing slightly. Keanu stood beside her, not speaking, just keeping his presence steady and calm. They were waiting outside Judge Lewis's private chambers, and in Clara's hands was the small metal box that could bring the truth crashing down. Keanu leaned in gently. "You don't have to speak today. I'll do it. Just stay with me." Clara gave a shaky nod. I didn't think it would get this far." "Truth usually doesn't," he said softly. "Not until it's loud enough to shake the ground." The doors opened. A clerk stepped out. "The judge will see you now." They walked inside. Judge Lewis, an older man with deep eyes and a careful manner, looked up from his papers. "Mr. Reeves, Mrs. Clara, you asked for an urgent meeting. Please sit." Keanu nodded and placed the box on the table. "Inside," he began, "is the full timeline of intellectual property theft that this case is built on. Original documents, digital trails, and a pattern that shows how a single idea moved from a junior employee to a global corporation without her permission." The judge opened the box slowly. Inside were labeled folders, flash drives, even printed screenshots from internal messages. Clara spoke up, voice trembling. "I was told my designs weren't good enough. I believed it, until I saw them in their product, just months later. I thought I was crazy, until others started telling me the truth." Judge Lewis read the first document carefully, then the next, and the next. His eyes narrowed. "How long have you had this?" he asked. "We received it 2 nights ago," Keanu said. "The man who gave it to us, Thomas, was followed, threatened. So was Clara, and myself." Judge Lewis sat back, silent for a long moment. "This changes the scope of the trial." Keanu nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. It's not just about who created the product. It's about how far people will go to keep the truth buried." The judge placed the folder aside. "I will authorize this as formal evidence, but be warned, Presenting it will bring the full weight of the company's legal team, and possibly their retaliation. Keanu's voice was calm. We've already felt it. We're still here. The judge gave a small nod. Then prepare yourselves. The next hearing is public, and it will be loud. News traveled fast. Within hours, leaks about the evidence spread like wildfire. Journalists swarmed outside the courthouse. People started questioning everything. Trending tags shifted again. Truth with Clara. Expose even. Keanu legal genius. Mark Zuckerberg sat in his glass office, eyes locked on the TV screen. Every channel was playing the same clip. Court receives explosive new evidence in Zuckerberg. Intellectual property trial. He turned to Evan Bates, who stood pale near the wall. You told me you destroyed the original data, Mark said coldly. I did, but apparently someone made a copy. You said there was no trail. Evan swallowed. Hard. I was wrong. Mark stood slowly, walked to the window. We need to control the damage, he said. Release a statement. What should it say? Mark's voice turned sharp. Deny everything. Question the evidence. Call it fabricated. Accuse them of hacking. Evan hesitated. But what if the court accepts it? Mark's eyes didn't blink. Then we discredit the people. Make them look unstable. Or better, make them disappear from public trust. The next day, as Keanu prepared for court, an anonymous video began circulating online. It was heavily edited footage of him from a past charity event, made to look like he had ties to questionable donors. The story caught fire for a moment, but then people fought back. A woman posted a full clip from the same event. I was there. Keanu was helping raise funds for children's hospitals. This clip is fake, and I won't stay silent while they try to tear him down. Dozens followed. More witnesses, more stories, more truth. And just like that, the smear campaign began to unravel. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was different now. Reporters lined the benches. Cameras were allowed in. Even students had come to watch. Mark Zuckerberg entered with his team, stiff and silent. Then Keanu walked in, holding Clara's hand gently as they approached their seats. The judge took his place. We begin today with new evidence submitted by the plaintiff. Mr. Reeves, you may proceed. Keanu stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't perform. He spoke like a man who had seen too much pain to let injustice slide. What you're about to see is not a theory, not a guess. It's a pattern, a theft, and a cover-up. He moved through the documents one by one, showing how the original code matched, how the design dates lined up, how Evan Bates logged into Clara's file system without permission. He played a voice recording. Just copy it. No one will believe she made it anyway. It was Evan's voice. The courtroom gasped. Clara sat still, a tear sliding down her cheek. Keanu looked toward Mark Zuckerberg. You called her invisible. You thought she had no voice. But today the world hears her. Mark didn't respond. He looked like a statue, cold, unreadable, but not confident. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Reeves, do you have anything further? Keanu nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I have one more thing. He pulled out a small sealed envelope. A letter, written by Clara the day she quit the company, never sent. I asked her to read it herself. Clara stood slowly. Her hands trembled, but her voice was clear. Dear leadership, she began. I gave you my best. I believed in your mission. I thought I mattered. But today I leave knowing my voice was never meant to be heard in your halls. I leave with no anger, just hope that one day someone will stand where I stood and not be ignored. When she finished, the room was silent. No one moved. The judge looked at the defense. Do you wish to respond? Mark Zuckerberg stood. His face was calm. We request time to review the evidence. The judge nodded. You'll have it. We reconvene tomorrow. But as everyone stood to leave, Keanu leaned toward Mark and said quietly, You can delay the truth, but you can't erase it. Mark didn't reply, but for the first time, he didn't look like the man in control. And tomorrow, the whole world would be watching. The courtroom that changed everything. The final day came with thick tension in the air. Outside the courthouse, a sea of people gathered. Some held signs saying truth matters. Others wore shirts with Team Clara. There were also protesters on the other side, holding signs that read, "Innovation over accusation." But their voices were drowned by the overwhelming support for truth. Clara looked out the window from a side room in the courthouse, her fingers tightly locked together. "Are we ready?" she whispered. Keanu, standing beside her, nodded slowly. "We've been ready for a long time. Today the world finally catches up." Inside the courtroom, the crowd was larger than ever. People filled every bench. Cameras had been allowed for live coverage, and millions were watching from around the world. Judge Lewis entered, his face solemn but calm. "We are here to conclude the case between Clara Mendez and the Zuckerberg-led corporation. Defense, you may now present your final statement." Mark Zuckerberg stood slowly. He walked with practiced control, wearing the same smooth expression he had used for years. When he spoke, it was with a calm, careful voice. "This case, Your Honor, is not about theft. It is about confusion, misunderstanding, and the danger of letting emotion lead over facts. We do not deny that Ms. Mendez contributed to early-stage designs, but we argue that innovation comes from collaboration, not ownership." Some people in the audience nodded, but then Keanu stood. He didn't walk to the front. He stayed by Clara's side. "Your Honor," he said clearly, "may we present one final piece of evidence?" Judge Lewis raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead, Mr. Reeves." Keanu lifted a flash drive and handed it to the clerk. It played on the court's main screen. The room watched as a video began, grainy footage from a security camera inside the company's design lab. There, Clara was seen placing her sketches on a desk. Minutes later, Evan Bates walked in, looked around, took photos of her work, then typed on her computer. The next clip was from a week later, a boardroom meeting where those very sketches were introduced as a new breakthrough by senior developers. Clara wasn't present. Her name was never mentioned. There was silence. Keanu spoke again. That was not collaboration. That was theft. And the world should know the difference. The courtroom buzzed. Clara stood beside him, voice steady. "Never wanted revenge," she said. "I just wanted my name to be said, my work to be seen, and for young girls like me, who dream of building something real, to believe they're not invisible." The judge turned to the defense. "Mr. Zuckerberg, do you deny this footage is real?" Mark didn't answer. His lawyer leaned in and whispered. Finally, Mark spoke. "We request settlement negotiations." The courtroom erupted. People gasped. Some clapped. Others just sat in stunned silence. It was a silent confession. A silent surrender. Judge Lewis nodded slowly. "That will be arranged. However, based on what has been presented, I will personally recommend a full investigation into the company's handling of intellectual property. This court session is adjourned." Outside, people waited. When Keanu and Clara walked through the courthouse doors, the crowd fell quiet. Then one person clapped, another, and then the whole crowd was cheering. Clara broke into tears, hugging Keanu tightly. A reporter shouted, "Keanu, what do you say to those calling you a hero today?" He smiled gently. "I'm not a hero. I just did what someone once did for me." Then he turned to Clara. "But she is." In the weeks that followed, the story dominated headlines. Mark Zuckerberg's company faced investigations, resignations, and shareholder revolts. Evan Bates resigned and vanished from public view. More former employees came forward, exposing similar patterns. As for Clara, she was offered partnerships, interviews, and speaking invitations from universities across the world, but she declined most of them. Instead, she started her own company, one that supported young developers and protected their rights. On launch day, she made just one public post. "We build with truth. We rise with kindness. Thank you, Keanu. Months later, Keanu returned to the same cafe where he first spoke with Clara. He sat at the corner table sipping black coffee. A young man recognized him and walked over nervously. Are you really Keanu Reeves? Keanu looked up and smiled. Some days. Can I ask? Why did you help her? Keanu paused. Because the world doesn't change through noise. It changes when someone listens, really listens, and then does something about it. The boy nodded, moved by the words. As Keanu walked out, he passed a mural painted on a nearby wall. It showed Clara holding her original sketches, surrounded by stars and circuits. Above it, in bold letters, it read, "Truth is never silent forever." And, in the corner, barely visible, were the words, "Inspired by kindness."